Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ahweyevu, CEO of Mindweaver and former BUCS rugby player. Quick shout out to all past, present and future members of EWRFC, who I always have mad love for. Really happy to be welcoming you all to today's event. We've had close to 100 Black Heritage student leaders register for today's event, and we're being joined by people from over 30 universities in the UK. We've got over 25 sports represented, including plenty of basketball players, American footballers, netballers, footballers, hockey players, judo athletes, as well as many others. We've got a huge range of sporting talent, which is fantastic. Around 25% of people attending today are on club committees as well, from club presidents to team captains and chairmen and chairwomen. So it's great to see all the clubs embracing this important topic. We've got a really good and even mix of males and females joining us today, which is also brilliant, and that will give us a really balanced base for discussion and questions at the end. The Black Heritage Forum is the third in our BUCS Sporting Leaders series. The aim of this event is to bring together a cohort of talented and engaged Black student athletes to create a space for discussion, to encourage the amplification of Black voices, to stimulate the understanding of the Black experience, as well as to unapologetically support and promote Black excellence in business and sport. Sport and race, or racism, and leadership and race or racism are inextricably linked in the experience of many people of Black heritage, I might even say most. And although for some, the focus on race, racism and anti-racism became a thing because of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, for most of us of Black heritage, our racialized experiences started way before June and way before we entered university or higher education. You know, for many of us, these things are facts of life rather than situational occurrences, and they're things that need to be unpicked and explored and understood in the various contexts in which they occur. So fora like this and events like this are really, really important, definitely at a time like this, but actually always. So we've got to continue them. We've got to, you know, keep making sure that we all push for these kind of conversations to happen, and understand that we've all got a role to play in furthering action and moving the dial and having constructive and transformative and empowering conversations. Hopefully, this is one of those conversations. Over the next hour, we will hear from a range of speakers who will talk to us about their experiences and their journeys of navigating the world of business, HE, and sport. With some takeaways that we hope that you will find useful and interesting, no matter what path you're on or deciding to take next. We're going to hear from our partners, our event partners, EY, on how they have adapted their recruitment process to put diversity and inclusion at the centre of everything they do. We're going to hear from Barikor, CEO of Our Parks, about his journey, about overcoming barriers and his experience in working and building a successful career in the sporting industry. And we're going to be hearing from two student leaders, Ahweyevu and Mia, talking about their experiences and how they've navigated the Black student experience, the world of HE sport and sport per se, as well as learnings and advice they've got to share. So a big thank you to all our speakers for being here tonight, and a really big thank you to all of you who have joined us. Bit of housekeeping before we start. Firstly, the session is being recorded, so behave. It will be available to view again and to share with friends and colleagues afterwards as well. So that's the first thing to note. It's a 1 hour session. The last 15 minutes will be a panel-based discussion with our speakers. On that, the Q&A function is available to use, so please do ask questions for our panelists at the end, and feel free to share any insights you learned from today on social media. Our handle is @BucksSport on all social media platforms, so LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Please do use the hashtag BUCS Sporting Leaders when you post. Now, before we start, we also want to hear from everyone and help you guys get over the initial anxiety of using the chat function. So if you could write in the chat function one thing that you're looking forward to learning from today's event, that would be great. And hopefully we'll be covering some of those off as we go. Right. Our first speaker is CEO of Our Parks UK. He's on the board of BUCS and also on the board of British Olympic Foundation and LTA, as I learned today. I'm delighted to invite Bourne onto the virtual stage and really looking forward to hearing about his journey and experience. Take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Kit. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen and we're going to take you through my journey. By all means, at any time through the chat, pop some stuff in the chat box and we can pick it up either later or midway through. Okay, so my name's Bourne. I'm the founder of a company called Our Parks. We deliver free outlook size classes across the UK. We are actually the biggest free outlook size company in the UK. It was born on the fact that I felt through my experience of being coached in high level athletics, I felt that everyone, no matter where they lived in the UK, should have access to high quality coaching in sport. And when I set it up at the time, there was no one really doing low entry level fitness in parks. There was lots of people doing stuff in parks, but it was pitched at a high level. So my mum said she really wanted to train outside, but she didn't want to be shouted at and told to do a press up. And I said, Mum, I really don't want anyone to shout at you until you do a press up. So I decided, how can I change that? And the idea was that to make an idea into reality, and that was going to make free exercise classes targeting inactive, diverse communities to get fit. But I think the most important thing about my journey is the way in which sport influenced me to be able to build a successful company through the values in which all you guys are learning through your training, through competing, and through reflecting on your performance. So 1990, and I really like to start with something like this because this is my council estate. This is where in East London I grew up, and I grew up with some of the biggest grime artists, you know, so Lizzie Rascal, Wiley. We sat on the walls and we MC'd and we did lots of innovative stuff. So innovation was the heart of what we did as children, and we didn't know we would go on to do amazing stuff and create a genre of music which is influencing the UK as is today. And I always remember like just being on that estate and growing up and learning how to hustle, how to survive, to me saying to myself, I wish one day I would have a garden. So we didn't have any gardens. And then you fast forward to 2018, and I built a house with my wife on Grand Designs with Kevin McLeod. So there's an element from that journey to here, which we're going to discuss, and all of the feedback, which I really attribute to sport, and I attribute it to the coaches that helped me get to where I am today, the lessons I learned through my training, but also having some real positive role models which you can look towards and see actually it is possible to achieve your goals, and to whether it's money, whether it's fulfilling other people's lives through great quality exercise, it is possible to achieve. So breaking down barriers builds new futures, and I think that's the most important thing I want to say today, because if we can start to break down these barriers and start to see people that look like us, sound like us, dress like us in positions of influence, we can then start to encourage more people to be diverse and more companies and organizations. And we'll touch on that in more detail. So as Our Parks, we now have 200,000 people doing the program every week. Earlier today, our website crashed because we've just launched something with the NHS and London Sport, and too many people went on the website. So I've had a stressful day. But I still sat in meetings and I still did all the stuff I needed to do without no one knowing what was going on in the background. So as entrepreneurs and as athletes, you would be very familiar with handling pressure, and being able to handle pressure and still perform is one of the most important things I can say that's got me to where I am today and keeps me going forward. Our mission of Our Parks is to target inactivity across the UK, specifically women and girls, and increase physical literacy amongst children and young people. And the physical literacy point is a really important part, because in terms of when it comes to sport and physical activity, many of the barriers are the fact that we're not giving our kids enough time outside to learn how to run, jump, catch and throw. And that's part and parcel with not only having the space to do it, but it could be the parents and education and of not wanting to do sport because they had a bad experience within what they were doing when they were a kid or when they were at university. So we need to tackle that through giving us most access to empower underrepresented groups to take part in physical activity, which then increases social mobility through sport and physical activity. And the way in which I approach that is, if we're going to start to change all of these systems, and we'll talk about systems in a minute, we have to start thinking about changing it at a level, board level, and the actual creation and development of programs. And for me, it was, I couldn't physically watch and sit there when every time a new initiative comes out and there's gaps missed. I'm like, why did we overlook that? And it's not we didn't overlook it. We weren't at the table to say this will help that community more. Only because I know it. Only because we've had that life experience, and we know life experiences increased opportunity of prosperity through business and sport because you have a different lens to look through. So that's why I sit on the board of BUCS. That's why I sit on the board of the LTA Trust and the British Olympic Foundation and Active Surrey, because I know first if I can just show my experience and pull it to the table when we're thinking about strategy and implementation, we can then start to widen that net. And that takes you to a goal of a system. And to understand this, and for big organizations, I always ask the question, what is a system? And if you take away anything, a system, so the goal of a system is to be resilient to anything that comes in from the outside that tries to change it. So you take that, and then you take me as an entrepreneur, and the reason why I became the founder of our parks was because I was in an organization that I was trying to almost push forward with my new ideas, but it didn't fit with their system. And you can imagine if you've got this young guy that likes sport, really wants to get people encouraged to do more stuff. And I say to a middle manager that the only way we can change this is if we move fast and break things. And he looks at me, he's got his mortgage to pay. He's like, that's the scariest thing he's ever heard. He's not going to move fast and break things because he knows he wants to get to the next level. And the best way to do that is to work the system. So the problem we have is that we've created these systems that function really well. They function really well because they absorb something, they define something, and then they kill the virus. And the virus is something that doesn't appeal within that system. So if we're going to change things, we're going to need role models. We're going to need to change those systems. And I'll touch a bit on that in a minute. And for me, like, I'm very fortunate that athletics was the leveler for me. I was good at high jump, and I had a chap called Dalton Grant, who was the British high jump champion at the time. And he saw me sitting on the wall with my friends just doing rubbish. And he said, you can sit here all your life, or you can come and jump, because you can jump. I jumped something like 2 meters 03, and I was 15. I'm not very tall, I just could jump really high. And I always remember saying to myself, but I don't want to do high jump. It's not cool. I don't really want to wear Lycra. It's not really my thing. But he just kept on saying to me, come and jump, come and jump, come and jump. And I did it, and it took me around the country. And I realized there was more to life than just sitting on my wall outside my block. Fantastic icons such as Michael Johnson, further, it made me want to be on that global stage. And then this chap here who's pointing with the Queen, that's my father-in-law. So when I married my wife and I met my father-in-law, when I was starting our parks, again, it was another big representation of, well, this is a businessman who is the Lord Lieutenant of Greater London. So anytime the royal family comes to London, he's responsible for making sure they get to the right places. And a very important man. And then I said to myself, okay, cool. So what is it that makes people want to jump to the next tier? And to do that, I had to understand what was happening within organizations. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the 3 Horizons framework. And basically what that says is, at any given time, 3 things are happening in an organization. And you can apply this to life. At any given time in your life, you're going to have three things happening simultaneously. And where you apply your energy to those three things will determine what your core objectives are. So in simplest terms, Horizon 1 of the 3 Horizon framework will be to maintain and defend your business. So whatever that your core business is, that's what you focus on. Horizon 2, you will nurture and kind of almost keep new emerging business. So that's if you don't want to lose something, so you might make a loss over here just to keep that cent on the market. And then Horizon 3 is when you grow new stuff. And typically on these horizons, 80% is focused on, let's say, Horizon 1. So 80% of everything you see, if it's the core business, so if it's, I don't know, think of a business, say, by example, Coca-Cola, 80% of what they do is selling Coke and making people buy more Coke and defending their market share of selling Coke. Let's say another 15% of that will be to just losing money just to almost grow emerging business. So buying other innocent movies, all that kind of stuff. So they do a 15% there. And then 5% is for growth on new innovations. And that's their inclusion and diversity policies. That's all the stuff that needs to change that system we talked about earlier, 5%. So you can see where we are. So you can see we have a massive mountain to climb. If we're saying of a 3 Horizons framework, 5% of every business organization's main purpose goes towards making it more inclusive or growing innovation. And for me, it was I couldn't sit in an organization and not trying to change that. So that's why I set up our parks. And our parks for me is a stepping stone to prove that sport, physical activity, is a level playing field. So when you're out there, whether it's rugby, football, or you're on the track, doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account, you're there to play a game, do a job, and kind of come back either victorious or learning from that opportunity you had to win on how to reflex. And that's what our parks was. So our parks was my stepping stone to say, okay, I want to give everyone the opportunity to feel special, because everyone wants to feel special once in a while. But it's not about competition. It's about feeling special within yourself and competing against your friends in a fun way. And we do a thing called a park off, which is a celebration of a year's worth of exercise, whether it's online or offline. And it's a sports day. They come together, they do tug of war, and they do wheelbarrow races, and they have fun. And I think, I'm not too sure, I think that is my time, but I'm coming back later for the Q&A. So I would love to answer any questions and share any thoughts. Thank you so much for listening, guys.
Thank you for that, Bon. That was really good. Particularly how you attribute your positive experiences directly to your sporting experience. I think, yeah, and also just changing the system. If there's anything to take away from that, is just focusing on what we can do to change the system. Right, on to the next part of the session. I'm really excited about this, talking to our student leaders. So we're joined by former BUCS student director, elected to represent 2.2 million students, a former BUCS board member and current Leicester University Students' Union President, Mia Nembhard. Mia will be joined by Ahweyevu Orumen, former BUCS student officer, currently University of Liverpool Athletics Union Vice President. He was also Vice President of Student Involvement at Buckinghamshire Students' Union, and on the rugby committee at both Buckinghamshire and Liverpool, so not very much. Good to have you both here, and thanks for coming along to share with us today.
No worries. A special shout out to Kix. I feel like all of those titles were very wordy, so well done.
Yeah, you're going to need an acronym, Ahweyevu, please, because I can't do that again.
You smashed it.
I'm going to start with you, I think, Ahweyevu, on this. So obviously taking all of those roles and operating as a student uni officer. Can you talk to us about the importance of Black representation and also why you decided to step up into what is a definite kind of void in that space?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to start is probably to talk about when I was a first year, the first time. So yeah, I first went to uni back in 2012, and we had a talk from the student union officers at the time, the sabbatical officers, and there was a guy called Jack Badu. He was vice president of education and welfare, and I didn't really understand what a student union was about, and I don't think I even realized this at the time. But there were three officers. The president was a guy called Ash Coles, the vice president whose role I took in a copy was Naomi, and then you had Jack. And then I just sort of, it's not that Ash and Naomi were speaking a different language, but just because I had this sense of familiarity with Jack, like we were from similar areas, we liked similar things, like, and again, like I didn't really understand the whole representation thing when I was 19. So, I think that was probably what got the ball rolling for me. And then I think the team that we had, we were quite a small university, so we only had two teams, but we had, 4 or 5 black players. And I think one of the things, not that it's necessarily representation, but the white teammates that I had, my captain, my president, them as individuals, because they were very much people that, let your personality flourish. I was very different to, my teammates from Halifax and, the Midlands and stuff who've, never seen or met people, like me. But, there were a few of us from London on the team, and, it was really nice that they just let us be ourselves. So moving forward, I got to third year, and I wasn't originally interested in running as a SAB. I just didn't really think I could be bothered to harass people for votes on campus. But then the president pulled me to one side and he said, look, I don't want you to feel like I'm asking. He was just really straight with me. He said, don't feel like I'm asking you this because you're black, because if I didn't feel like you could do it, I wouldn't ask. But I feel like you being black is the extra chip that this university needs to just get more black people involved with our recreational activities. And I was like, okay. He said, but I do think you'll be good at the job anyway. I said, okay, so well, if I'm not good enough, I'm not going to win. So, I really enjoyed the role, and a couple of things that I started to understand the representation a bit more as I was going along. And I think one of the things I started to notice was, and there's tangibles and intangibles. So your tangibles are your key performance indicators, like the percentage of BAME students that get involved and stuff. But little things like I just started noticing that there were just a lot more black people in and around the office coming to check out activities. A lot more people we had a very much open door policy with our office. And there was just, obviously some of them were my friends, but then a lot of them were just people that had heard about me, or they just felt more comfortable asking me questions and stuff like that. And, my co-sabs, they never found a problem with it. They were quite similar to me in terms of just being realistic about things. And they just used to be, look, if more black students come and speak to you because they sort of are starting to understand it more because someone who looks like them is there, and that's fair enough. So yeah, and then I think the last thing to physically answer the question about why it's important, representation in HE. So I think it was my beginning of my second term, so over the summer it was graduations and stuff, and there was this guy who I sort of knew through a friend. Just whenever I saw him, it was just how are you sort of thing. And, it was his graduation. And, I bumped into him in the underpass and said, hi, how are you? And he said, bro, I just want to say thank you. And I thought, well, I'm pretty sure we've only had about 7 conversations in about 2-3 years. And he said, look, like, you might think this is a bit weird, but, on my course, there's just not a lot of people like me. He was very much like people I grew up with back home. And he just said, look, halfway through my first year, I wanted to leave. And then I saw you. I didn't know who you were, but I saw you, we won the election. And I thought to myself, if someone like him can be in a space like that with not a lot of black people, so if someone like me can do that, then I can finish this degree for my daughter. And then he did. And I just didn't really know what to say. But I think that was the moment where it started to click for me how important it is just to see someone who looks like you in those kind of spaces. Because I'm not going to say I ran for it to inspire people, but I think it's a default setting, and a good one at that.
Yeah, definitely. Amazing. I'm gonna take it to you now, Mia, because I think it's a nice place to kind of follow on from that. Just to ask you what your thoughts are, because obviously you've been involved in the BUCS board. Again, you're representing a whole host of students. And you're also a black student, so you've got personal experience there. What do you think needs to change or needs to improve, if anything, in the approach to inclusion of black students, both in HE sport and in HE generally?
So I guess I'll start with like an anecdote. And it's when I really start to think about the participation of Black students in sport. In my third year, when I was club captain of the netball club at my university. So I'm from South London. So I've seen plenty of like Black excellence in sport, you know, like Black students dominating athletics, whatever you give them is done. But when I got to university and I started looking specifically at university clubs, so like our official, we had Team Leicester, all of a sudden, all the Black students that I saw that were even on campus, they weren't engaging, they just weren't there. And it really struck me when a student came up to me, and it was like a freshers fair, and she kind of diverted herself past all the other, like the rest of the committee was white. But she came to me and she went, honestly, are there Black people there? Is it, you know, da, 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 da. So I think what institutions need to understand is Black participation, one, isn't just, they're not barriers that are put up by Black students themselves, but Black participation in things also requires a level of comfort and safety. It's not just as simple as representation is so important, but it's because it fosters a sense of safety and security, as in you're there, someone else is there. That means that hopefully people aren't going to look at me and base any kind of criticism based on myself. And I think it's trickier in sport because when we think about like institutional racism, sport doesn't necessarily match up with that as nicely because, you know, we think of sport as based on merit. If you're good enough, you'll get it. But I think in terms of when we think of access, especially to university sport, that's very difficult. That's very different because it's more of it's supposed to be more of an accessible space. It's based on, you know, students liking stuff. Do I want to join in with that? But the first thing that students will see is that club representative of myself. So especially when I think about the leadership element is even more important because it's not based particularly on access to sport. It's based on students feeling comfortable and also there being a space for Black participation in these areas, which currently I think a lot of places think that there are and there aren't. So I guess I could even refer to my board experience. It was a really interesting one. But one thing that I think coming from a student union place and moving into a more kind of commercial board was perhaps these like really small nuances that provided kind of like a lack of understanding, and I felt very Black in those spaces, and I noticed it. And some of the things where people are free to kind of talk about diversity and inclusion, I'm like, well, that's my lived experience, you know. It's not something that I can just chuck away at the end of the day. And when I speak about it, I'm speaking about feeling safe, not like to meet a KPI, which I'm not saying what BUCS board does, but I think it's kind of a corporate issue when we talk about these different awards for like diversity and inclusion, and you know, it's such a big buzzword. What does it actually mean? Because inclusion is just inviting people to the table, but if they don't feel safe and they're not heard, then it doesn't mean anything. That was a long answer, but hopefully.
Oh, but it was a good one.
Yeah.
I loved it.
All the points. You hit all the points.
Okay, good.
And actually, this one then, kind of bringing all of that stuff together, and it's sort of for both of you, is it's just about why you think it's important to have conversations like this that do focus on the Black experience and centre Blackness, because for a lot of people that's a confusing kind of thing. Like, why do we even need to do that?
Yeah, I'll give you a break because that was class. I was very very happy with that one. Why is it important? I think the first thing we need to get people away from, I know not everyone says it, but I think a term we really need to steer people away from is I don't see colour. And I know when people say it, I know it's supposed to come from a good place. It's I treat everyone the same, and it's like, well, it's fantastic you treat everyone the same, but then when you say that without realising, I say you, this is for people who need to hear this, when people say that, what they don't realise is that they're absolving themselves of accountability to, you know, when I'm in a situation where someone chooses to see my colour and treat me a different way, like you're basically saying, oh, I'm not going to get involved because I don't see it. Do you know what I mean? So I feel the easiest way to say it is people need to just stop being scared of the word black. Like it's okay to recognize that someone is black. Like it's completely fine. Do you know what I'm saying? Because we don't call men, women, however people identify. We don't just call everyone human. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's okay for people to be different. Like, and it just makes for a better experience if you do actually recognize everyone's differences and stuff. So yeah, I think that's probably just why it's important. It's just, you just have to don't have these colorblind goggles on, because it just doesn't help our experience. If anything, it sounds a bit selfish, because you're just saying it to just make yourself feel a bit better about things. Or I'm a good person because I don't treat you differently. It's like, no, see me differently but treat me the same, and then recognize when someone else doesn't. That's the only way to say it, really.
See me differently but treat me the same. That's good. Yeah, no, I like that. What do you reckon, Mia? If you can jump on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like the same slogan, but no, it was a really important point. And I guess, yeah, just jumping on what you said, it's about understanding that to be inclusive, you need to be equitable too. So if you don't see color, you don't understand that I have a different lived experience. So that is really important. I guess these kind of spaces are important because Black leadership can be so isolating and singular in experiences. So a lot of people are functioning but alone and by themselves, and I think it's important to kind of collaborate in that and bring some kind of safe space to trailblazing people that are just trying to do the best for themselves and end up accidentally inspiring loads of other people because they're taking up more than just their own space. Which is tricky and is a big responsibility, and it's one that most people probably don't sign up for, but it's where we are. And I guess it's important as well for students to see Black people in careers or having backgrounds in sport and what that leads to if you're not an athlete. So there'll be plenty, I'm sure, so many students here that I hope will go into like amazing sporting careers, Team GB, all of that. But if at any point in that journey you stop and you think, what do I want to do? Having that avenue and seeing what sporting Black students have done with their lives is really important as well. Because I think it shouldn't be, but it feels niche. It feels like it's something that potentially I haven't really seen much of, as in this person went into this and they're no longer a sporting champion, but the sporting background helped them do this. So I think it's a much needed space to take up.
Yeah, well, there's a whole webinar on that actually, probably. And I've got one last follow-up for the both of you, which is again, I guess, directed at what you think that students can do to encourage or to address the lack of inclusion or to exclusion within their own spaces. How can they engage their sporting clubs or their leadership within their universities in the ways that you guys have to promote and support inclusion of Black athletes or Black students in particular?
I think the first thing, and it sounds a little bit cliche, and I don't like sounding cliche, but I think what has helped me especially is be unapologetically yourself. I think like be unapologetically Black. Whatever your definition of being Black is, just be that and never apologize. Don't feel like you have to dilute yourself for your crowd, because if they don't accept you for you, then they don't deserve you as a teammate, you know. And then, you know, if you want to run in these spaces and, like, you know, become a sabbatical officer and be a potential beacon for more Black students, that's fantastic, but don't put yourself under pressure to do it, because the first thing, just by being there, being in the videos, being on the posters, being that face that they get through their letterbox, that is where it starts for a lot of Black students, and they don't even realize. And then I get a lot of the people here have probably a little bit tired of some of the conversations that a lot of us have had to have since June. So if you are tired, like, fatigue is real. As a Black person, just in general, don't be afraid to just take a break. And if someone is asking you, like, look, just not today, man. Like, I'm a little bit tired. You know, if you deliver your message however you want to do it. If you feel like you need some support, I feel, you know, I get like I'm not a sab anymore, but I'm sure if you wanted to drop the likes of myself and Mia a message after this, just to get a bit more of an anecdotal perspective, that'd be completely fine. But just to send it back to what you said. I think the best thing is to just ask the right questions, put people not in difficult positions, but make them a little bit uncomfortable, because that's the only way people are gonna learn and unlearn certain things. You know, if there's certain comments that you used to let slide, don't let them slide anymore, but just politely explain why it's not going to slide anymore. You know, just that kind of thing.
Yeah. And what do you reckon, Mia?
I'd say it's a task that really shouldn't be doing. I feel like it's not, the sole responsibility of a Black person to have to ask to be included or validated in spaces, but I do understand that's not against the question. I guess I feel like really strongly about reiterating it's not your responsibility to do that. But I feel like we won't go into the politics of the marketization of HE, but university students are in a unique position in that, unfortunately, you're customers and you're paying for something. And as a member of a student union, as a member of student community, you have every right to question the delivery of things, and that includes you feeling included in space. So I guess from my thing, it would be more challenging those institutions versus giving them all the answers to do stuff, because again, that's probably going to the strong history of students, especially Black students, being asked for their traumatic experiences with no payment or whatever. So if you're getting paid to be a Black student expert, that's great, but if you're not, ask them what they're doing. And I guess constructive questioning. Your union, moving away from, if anyone tells you, if you ask someone, what are you doing for Black students, and they give you BAME, that's a huge red flag in itself. But yeah, it's a tricky one. Protect your space, firstly. Especially with student union positions, similar to what Ahweyevu said, there are spaces for you to take up. So if you don't like something, you run for something, but at the same time, be gentle and considerate of yourself, in that if you're in a space that doesn't make you feel comfortable, and that may be a team or whatever, remove yourself from that space until work is done. And find alternative spaces, because like this one, you didn't know it was going to happen, it popped up and it's here. So that's what I'd say.
Amazing. Thank you guys for both of that. I probably could ask you 10 million more questions, but I think people get bored of hearing from me anyway. So thank you so much. And we will have you guys on the Q&A panel later on. So we'll speak to you again. Thanks, guys. So our next session, we've got Paul Sobers, and he's had a varied and interesting career, recently moving from a senior role at HSBC to become a senior manager for student recruitment and attraction at EY. Paul's been instrumental in EY becoming an award-winning employer for diversity and inclusion, ensuring that D&I is central to their recruitment strategy. We've had lots of questions actually submitted before the event, specifically for Paul and about EY, so really delighted to welcome you to the screen to share your story and your insights.
All right, sorry about that. I was just getting my slides up. So as Kit mentioned, my name is Paul Sobers, and I'm the senior manager for student recruitment, attraction and early identification. So what that kind of means is I kind of look after all of EY's attraction at universities, schools, for all of our graduate, internship, industrial placements, work experience, everything, the whole 9 yards. So it's quite a big role, but it's a fun role. So when I was first asked to do this, I said what I wanted to kind of go through with you is a bit about my background and my career and how I've come to this position. A bit about diversity at EY and how I have actually found it, and then just a little bit of advice in terms of how you could look at standing out in your applications. And when you're putting in applications, whether that be EY or any other organization, making sure that your application stands out. So I just wanted to go through a bit about my journey. So I am originally from Barbados, so I'm not from the UK. I grew up in Barbados until I was 18. I did my A-levels over in Barbados and then applied to universities. I had a couple of options in terms of what I wanted to do. I could either study in the Caribbean, or my parents kind of wanted me to study in the UK to kind of get that experience of, I guess, living outside of the Caribbean. The only way I could study in the UK though is if I got this particular scholarship. So I applied to both of them just in case to see what would actually happen. I got into the university in the Caribbean, but I also got offers from Loughborough University and Nottingham University here in the UK. Now, originally Barbados was starting, or sorry, the university in the Caribbean was starting before Loughborough. So I said, okay, I'm going to go there. Didn't find out if I got the scholarship as yet. So I said I'd go to Trinidad and start studying over there. Started studying over there. 2 days later, found out I got the scholarship. I was able to study in the UK. Literally moved back to Barbados after 2 days. Packed up all of my things and moved to the UK 3 weeks later, starting in Loughborough. Now, obviously moving to Loughborough from a country like Barbados where it's majority black, I wasn't sure how I would actually fit in. I didn't know anything about Loughborough. The only thing, I barely even knew how to pronounce its name when I first moved there. So it was something that was very, very different for me and a very, very different environment. I like to say that it was easy moving across, looking back at it now, but I say to myself, it took me a year to probably adjust to actually being in this country, just the culture and the background of people and generally just trying to settle in. Once I'd settled in, and I guess I got my social group around me, a group of friends that I had that I was really, really close to, it actually made life a little bit easier in Loughborough. And I just kind of settled into the course. But then, as you always do, you get various different setbacks. I got another setback, which was I ended up not doing as well in my degree as I would have liked. So I kind of had to do resits, which was something that I didn't think I was going to have to do. I had to do resits while I was at Loughborough, which isn't great considering my parents were spending so much money for me to study over here as well, which wasn't ideal. So I did the resits and I managed to graduate with a 2-1 degree from Loughborough, which was great. That was in civil engineering that I did at Loughborough, and I did that for 5 years after I left Loughborough, slowly thinking that civil engineering wasn't quite the route that I wanted to go down. I had enjoyed it to that point, but I wasn't passionate about it. So I started looking at other professions. One of my housemate at the time said to me, "Have you ever thought about career in recruitment?" I said, "Never thought about career in recruitment, never something I'd looked into." Applied to a few jobs, ended up getting 3 interviews there. And decided to go with agency recruitment to start with. Didn't really enjoy agency recruitment as I thought I would, and thought I had made a terrible mistake in terms of my career. And then I realized that you can move internally and kind of do recruitment from a company perspective. So I started applying for jobs again, and that's when I got into apprenticeship recruitment. And from then, I've just kind of gone from strength to strength. Because I think when I moved into recruitment, a big factor for me was that I needed to get back to the position that I had pretty much lost when I decided to change from civil engineering to recruitment, because I'd been working in civil engineering for 5 years at that point. So every step that I made in my recruitment journey was a step upwards, and I always wanted to make sure that I was always moving forward. So I ended up getting a job as an apprenticeship resourcing officer. Then from that, I went to student recruitment officer. Then I went to recruitment advisor. And then this is when stuff really started to change and it started to ramp up a little bit more. My boss is going on maternity leave in this role. And she said, "Oh, would you want to take over managing the whole team?" I said, "Yep, I'll gladly do that." Started managing the team. 8 months into managing that team at Capita, I then got the call from HSBC to say, "We have this opportunity that is available here for you. Would you be interested in interviewing?" Interviewed for the job there, ended up getting it. And then I was at HSBC for 2.5 years. And then off the back of HSBC, once I've been there for a little while and you've seen a few recruitment cycles, I said, let me look at other opportunities. So that's when the job at EY came up. I ended up starting at EY as an attraction manager there. And then I don't know if it's a bit of a pattern, but then my boss was going on maternity leave again, and I decided to put myself forward for her role. And then when she went off on maternity leave, I ended up getting this role, and that's the role now, the senior manager role that I've been doing for the last year. So in 7 years, I've managed to move up from an associate consultant working in agency all the way up to a senior manager. And it's something that I just had to drive myself. It wasn't something that anybody handed to me. I just had to make sure that I was getting the opportunities that I actually wanted, so applying for the opportunities that I actually wanted. So that's kind of my career journey to this point. I wanted to just give you a few pictures here in terms of what my life in and out of the UK has looked like. This is literally my family, my friends, awards that I've held. And I guess what I just wanted to show is that there isn't much of a difference between my home life and my work life, because I want it all to kind of blend into one. And I think what the guys were kind of saying earlier is kind of that whole bringing your whole self to work, so people kind of know exactly what you are and exactly what you stand for. So that kind of leads into my stuff on EY as a whole and kind of working at EY. Now, I wanted to talk a bit about like diversity at EY. EY has made a statement. You can see this anywhere on their website, that they are aiming to double the proportion of female and Black minority ethnic talent in their UK partnership to 40% for females and 20% for BME by July 2025. And 15% of those partners, they want to be Black. Now, I know a lot of companies make these statements and they'll say that this is what they're doing, but I think what I have seen at EY, granted I've been here since August of last year, there are a few things that have kind of stood out for me in terms of how EY is actually making this happen and doing things internally to make sure this is happening. A big part of EY is about their people, and they want to make sure that their people feel as supported as possible. Now, I have only been here, like I mentioned, 1.5 years, and there are a couple things that happened that I was like, this is actually an organization that cares about its people. Obviously, COVID hit in March. It wasn't something that anybody could have predicted or thought was going to happen. EY's response to that was everybody can actually work from home. It was kind of making sure everybody was supported and set up to be able to work from home. And that switch pretty much happened instantaneously. Your managers also supported you with various different meetings to make sure that you always still felt connected to the team and that you weren't really drifting with this whole working from home environment. Separate to that, we had the tragic death of George Floyd that actually happened. And I wasn't sure how EY would respond to that. It's a big corporate company, so I wanted to see how they would respond. The first thing that they did the very next day after that happened, they held a meeting with our race and ethnicity network for all people right across the UK to kind of come onto this meeting and discuss how they actually felt about what was actually going on in the world. So it was an open space, an open forum that people could actually voice their opinions in terms of how they felt about the tragicness that happened in the States. And when I saw something like that, I was like, this is an organization that cares about their people. Off the back of that, what I decided to do, we work with a partnership called Young Diverse World Changers. And it's a partnership that we use to kind of help us attract more Black talent to our organization. And it's something that I'll talk about briefly when I talk about our programs. But we were working with them and we were already running a series of webinars with them. And we decided, okay, now that this has happened, let's change the next webinar that we're talking to these students all about Black Lives Matter. We invited our whole student recruitment team so they could actually hear and be a part of this discussion. We invited our race and ethnicity network as well. We invited our Black community, and we invited students from outside of our organization to just hear, and they could talk, tell their stories, they could ask questions, anything that they actually wanted to do. And that was when I realized that this is a supportive organization when it just comes to the people in that organization. Off the back of that, I know I've mentioned a couple of the networks that we actually have, such as our Black community and race and ethnicity network. Those are just a few. We also have like a women's network. We have an LGBT network. We have networks that you can actually join when you come to that, when you come into the organization, that they talk about all different types of things and struggles of various different factors of our society. So if you think you're coming into an organization as an only Black person, there are networks that you can actually join where you can meet loads of other Black people within the organization, whether that be in the UK, whether that be worldwide. You can meet as many of them as you would like. And it makes you feel a little bit more ingrained in that environment when you can actually see that there are people here that work here that are just like me. And then the big thing that we've just started doing, not just started doing, we started it a couple years ago, but we started our Black Heritage and Business program last September. And this was because EY wants to diversify the population that we actually have. As you can see, we have a commitment that we've kind of set here in place. So what we said is we are going to create some first year programs that we want to target particular students so that we make sure that they are kind of moving through our programs. And the opportunity with these first year programs is that you do well on it, you get an offer onto our summer internship. Then if you do well on the summer internship, you get an offer onto our graduate program. And it's almost starting from as early as possible to make sure we're identifying top talent from early as possible. So we have 2 programs that we offer, a Women in Business series across all of our service lines, and a Black Heritage and Business program as well. And this is open to all first years. You don't necessarily need to be from a Black background or a female background. You just have to be passionate about the cause as well. Ideally, if you are from a Black background or you're a female, they are open to you as well. So you can actually join any of those programs. So I just wanted to also highlight like a couple of the awards. I know we spoke briefly about awards earlier. It's great as an organization to start being able to be recognized for some of the stuff that you're actually doing out there when it comes to diversity. So this year already we've been recognized at the Target Job Awards for Best Diversity and Inclusion Strategy, and that is our commitment to students and making sure they feel supported through our process and through our application process. We've also been recognized at the BAME Apprenticeship Awards as well, which was held earlier in November as the best employer in finance, legal, and professional services for BAME students. And coming up, we have the Institute of Student Employers Awards as well. That's going to be in December. And basically, we've been shortlisted there for commitment to improving diversity through student recruitment. So it's a lot of stuff that we are doing, but also we are being recognized for the stuff that we are doing in the space. And it's a big, big thing for us. And we're really, really passionate to make sure that we keep on just going from strength to strength in this space. So I wanted to give a bit of advice here to you around, I guess, application processes in general, not necessarily EY's process, but application process in general. I would say practice. All organizations now do some sort of online testing or online analysis. I would say you need to practice these. Even if you think you're really, really good at math or you're really, really good at verbal reasoning, a lot of you will be out of practice because some of these tests are timed and you need to not only ask correctly, but to time. So it's just making sure you're very, very aware of how these tests actually come. So when you come to do the real one, you feel as comfortable as possible. So there are loads of sites out there that you can actually practice these tests on. And I can't stress that enough. The next thing I would say is research. I guess from an organizational perspective, there's nothing worse than interviewing a candidate, because we all want you to pass. We don't want to be interviewing candidates all year. Then a candidate that comes and doesn't really understand what the organization actually does, what the role is they're actually going to be going into. Do as much research as possible. All we're asking for you to do is kind of have a cursory glance at our website, find out what our competitors are doing that we probably aren't. It's stuff that you can actually bring to an interview and talk to them in an interview about, and you can actually ask questions about it if you weren't sure about certain things that you actually read. Then finally, I would just say to be yourself. I know that was stressed earlier by Ohio, but I can't stress that enough in terms of being yourself through these recruitment processes, because how I look at it is if you pretend to be something that you're not, there are 2 things that are going to happen when you go into that role. You'll either, you'll go into a role pretend to be something that you're not. So either you're going to hate the job or your boss is not going to like you because you pretend to be something that you're not and you can't do what you said you've actually said that you can do. So I would say just be yourself as much as possible through that process, because we don't hire carbon copies of every single thing that's going. We hire people, and we want different people because different people bring different skill sets. I always say that diversity breeds innovation, because if you have the same person over and over again, the same thing is just going to come out over and over again. So I would say we want as diverse a population as possible to make sure that we're being as innovative as possible. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight a few of our programs that we're actually running. So I've already mentioned our Discover EY program and our Women in Business series. That's for first years. That's for 1 to 2 days. That takes place in April of next year. We're still open for applications for that now. We have our summer internship, which is a 6-week summer internship. And that takes place in the summer, starting in June. This year, we had to run that virtually, so we had to change that to a virtual event this year. Hopefully, we're able to go back to face-to-face, and it'll be 6 weeks, but if not, it'll be a virtual event again. We also run a year-long industrial placement program as well. That's open for applications now as well, so you can apply for that. And we also have our graduate program that you can apply to. That's a 3-year graduate program across assurance, tax, consulting, and strategy and transactions. So that's everything from me. I know that was a whistle-stop tour of everything. I hope that was all very, very clear. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask me anything, because I should be able to answer it.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. Really particularly liked when you were talking about your own journey and every step being a step upwards. I think that's amazing. And also you hear so much, I think, about imposter syndrome when it comes to Black folks, and actually just hearing you talk about the fact that you were like, yeah, I'll do that, and creating your own opportunities it was really nice to hear. So thank you for sharing that. And we will be putting up a poll right now, just a quick poll to ask you guys if you are interested in hearing more about career opportunities at EY. So click away. And for the next part, I will ask all of our panelists to all of our speakers to come back on screen, because we've got a really interesting Q&A session coming up now. And once I can see you all, there you are. Lovely faces. We're going to jump straight in. I'm going to point this one at Paul and Mia, I think, and it's a question from Jamie. I know Mia's ready for this one. Do you feel that moving away from terms like BAME and people of colour help advance the conversation around Blackness? Is part one of that question, but also Paul in particular. What are your thoughts on the use of BAME in the corporate space and the work of D&I generally?
It's a funny story that I do have about BAME and I'm Black and using Black. So I think we do need to move away from it, because I think it trivializes it in general in terms of what it actually is. And they are separate ethnicities all featured under that big BAME umbrella that everybody uses. But like, one of the stories that I will tell is like our Black Heritage in Business program. It was something that we launched last September for the first time. And obviously I wasn't here when this was all being set up, but my predecessor says to me that originally when we wanted to launch that program, it was a bit of a back and forth in terms of what we should actually call it. And she was very much along the lines, and I agree with her, we need to call it exactly what it says on the tin, Black Heritage in Business. And that's why we have called it what it was. The business at the time was very much in the mindset that, oh, we should call it something different. We kind of hide it under another title, but she was very much, we need to call it what it is. And we stuck with that title, Black Heritage in Business. And now this is the second year that we're running it, and it's actually more popular than it was last year. So I think the right decision was made on that. So I do agree that we do need to separate them out. Definitely.
And Mia, what do you think?
So as previously inferred, I hate the term BAME. Various reasons, and I think it's like with the times, isn't it? So I know the question was BAME and of color is, I guess, on a more recent flavor, but I'm sure BAME at some point was a very useful term, but at this point all it does is homogenize a huge group of identities, and I guess it's like contextually lazy, because minority where, minority who, because if you think of, I don't know, Black, if you're talking about Black and Asian, you're talking about a global majority, which I know some people love to use. It's very empowering. And I guess also the term, it creates discomfort for the wrong people, because it creates a laziness around people think diversity, inclusion, BAME, and also discomfort around using the word black. And I guess a lot of the time I've seen it being used by various EDI teams, and it's because they're not very clear on who they're trying to target and who they want to actually speak to. So yeah, I think it could be very damaging, especially. And I know there's been various, not necessarily within this group, but I know there's been various feedback from the MEs, as in like, what about us? you know. So yeah.
And actually, just in terms of the work that I do with D&I and looking at the data specifically, I've found that when people use BAME, what we're doing is papering over the cracks of our lack of black. So people, you know, we're 15% BAME. Okay, that's cool, but what's your percentage when we're talking about black specifically? Oh, it's 3. You've got a challenge, you know. So that's partly where I think what you're saying there, Mia, about the laziness is a real truism. I've been anti-BAME for a very long time, so I think it's a complete truism. And I'm gonna take this one over to Bourne, actually to go into his wheelhouse, because we've had a question about how you think the sporting qualities that people have should be brought out to best effect. I know that you've basically said that was your sporting qualities led you in a way to being the CEO you are today. How do people bring that out and draw that out, whether it's you know, for applications or for demonstrating their strengths?
Yeah, I think so the first thing about sports is, I said it earlier, about being a level playing field. And I think Ahweyevu, in terms of, it's hard to say, because you get a certain rigor from doing sports. So you'll have your determination, you have your preparation, and you have your execution. And what business is, and what I've learned from it is, you still have to be able to get on with your teammates. So, and they have to accept you for who you are. That's part and parcel of it. And you don't have to code switch or code switch what you have to do, but you get an opportunity to meet people you wouldn't once met. So for me, it was, I got to meet people that I wouldn't have spoken to in the street, but for an hour, 2 hours a day, I get to have that conversation. And this is where it gets important, because then if you are true to yourself, they can get to understand your culture, you can get to understand their culture. So the first thing what happens is, you get to almost get to understand what happens outside of, whether it's your council estate, whether it's your halls. So suddenly you get to learn from each other. Then from a sporting background, it's the opportunity to either, two things you can do. You can either take what you're seeing and what you're learning and adapt. When I say adapt, I don't mean change yourself. I mean adapt to know how to behave in certain situations. And the problem we face is, it's all around knowledge. So if you've never been in a situation, and Paul said earlier around giving some tips, he's giving you the tips to say, when you get in the situation, really, if you've been there before, you know how to act, and you can probably get to the front as quickly as possible. If you've never been in that situation, no one's taught you how to act in that situation, what happens is you don't maximize your true potential, because it's the first time you've been, whether it's a fancy restaurant, whether it's on a field which requires you to behave a certain way. And that's the most important thing. I think we lose lots of talent and lots of individuals to other things because they came into a situation they wasn't comfortable being in, and you almost portray something which people aren't comfortable seeing. So they say, oh, they were loud, they were aggressive, and you wasn't being loud, you wasn't aggressive. You were just being true to yourself. So sport is really, really good at that, because when you get into, when you're playing a game, you know the rules and you play within those parameters, and everyone has to play within those parameters. And that teaches you, okay, it's not about my color of my skin or how I speak. As long as I play within those parameters, I can exceed as a team or as an individual. So that's what sport teaches you. So it says, if you're going to go and forge a career, you play within the parameters that are given. So a CV, an interview, a time limit, you have to play in those parameters. And that's what I feel sport gives anyone that's seeking a career. It gives them the accountability to perform when they're given the parameters that they need to perform in. And it shouldn't matter how you speak, how you look. It should be down to your talent in that scenario.
No, exactly. Yeah, so I really like that. Again, I wish I could expand on that a bit more. But connected to that, I'm going to go to you, Ahweyevu, because we had a lot of questions about sport, particularly rugby, from people who are playing in teams where, you know, that are predominantly white, which is the experience for a lot of us. And the questions usually focus on what rugby can do to be more inclusive, more open to Black students.
Okay, so yeah, there's different ways to answer it. There's what can the RFU do, there's what can the students out of the RFU do, and there's what different, you know, student committees can do. I don't have all the answers for the RFU. I'm sure Maggie Alfonsi has a few. Hold tight, her.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing the rugby community actually needs to do, and that starts from like fans, from grassroots and up, is to stop hiding behind this blanket term of rugby is the most inclusive sport in the world, because what they actually mean is that anyone, any size can play rugby, because rugby has 15 positions that a lot of it is predominantly defined on your body type. So you can weigh 20 stone and be 5'4". If you've never played at 25 years old, let's try you at front row. You can be 6'5", lightning quick, never played rugby before. Oh, let's try it with centre or second row. That's what they mean by inclusive. And, you know, just to touch on that, for anyone who anyone who's not heard of House of Rugby, so House of Rugby is a podcast that James Haskell used to be on with Mike Tyndall, former England players. And, you know, after the whole George Floyd thing, I sort of had a moment on Instagram where I just let everything out. And Rugby Joe I talked a bit about rugby. Rugby Joe got in contact. I did an interview that was shortened and put on 5 minutes on Instagram. And if you could see the comments from some people that just thought I was just basically making it up and saying, I've never seen this kind of thing. So the first thing is the rugby community needs to just accept that there is a racism and a classism problem. There's two different things going on. So that's the first thing, which can seep into the uni game. The second thing is I'm not sure if we have any rugby committee members in the comments. You know, some people might disagree with running to have a black face on committee, but at the same time, you don't know what that might do for someone who's, you know, coming from potentially maybe London, or someone that has more black people to come into somewhere like Liverpool, for example. You know, I'm a bit older than most of the freshers that came into the first team, but it was still really nice when I'd go to social. And there was one first team player who was black, and he just used to come up to me to talk to me, you know, and he's a lot younger than I am, but just little things like that. It was like, you know, this is my guy. Do you know what I mean? It was just a bit more appealing to go to training. So, and that's me. I'm over 25. Do you know what I mean? And this guy was 19 at the time, and he didn't realize what he was doing for me, even though I'm a lot closer to 30 than he is. And another thing, so yeah, obviously, you know, when you see a black person at training, you know, I don't want to say go up to them because they're black, because it does sound a little bit reductionist, but that first interaction is going to be really important for them, because there's a lot more unknowns that they're not aware of, that they're going to walk into. When it comes to Freshers Fair, Mia, I'm sure you probably had it. You literally used a direct example I was thinking of. You know, when I came here, I knew I was going to sign up for rugby, but I'm a bit of a swimmer, so I was just looking around and stuff. And you know, I think there was a judo table, and this black girl walked up to me, and I'm not gonna lie, if I was just gonna walk past the table, and because someone who looked like me, sounded like me, she actually made judo sound really appealing, because she was talking my language. You know what I'm saying? So if you're playing sort of niche sports, I don't know if you're the only black person on your lacrosse team, or over here, I think gymnastics and trampolining, they've both got one black girl each, but they're both committee members. You know, use your blackness. Like, and it sounds like a bit of an umbrella term, but it's the same thing as be yourself, because that is what is going to attract another black student to come and join you, because they just see someone that looks like them. And then the last thing for the RFU, if anyone's listening, not just use your black players, but listen to your black players as well. You know, there's a lot of talk about how they're only going to make Maritoji captain because he's black. If people think that, so what? You know, I'm not saying make Mara captain because he's black. If he's the best leader and he happens to be black, by all means use him. You've got someone like Jason Robinson, who is, for me, the greatest England player of all time, and it's taken up until now for the RFU to apologise for never having used their first ever black captain. You know, rugby coaches, ask yourselves why you never tend to see a black kid at fly half. That's another conversation for another day, but
that's a big one.
That's a massive one, and I've got so much time for it, but we don't have the time for it.
No, we don't. Damn it.
And yeah, just
stacking.
Literally. But yeah, and the last thing, I think every rugby committee will learn something if they watch. So Benno Urbano, he's a professional prop, plays for Bath, and he recently got an England call up, and he recently just dropped an Amazon documentary. I've forgotten the name, but I'm sure if you just Google Benno Urbano Amazon Prime, it will come up. And yeah, a lot of it is essentially the black experience in rugby. You know, there's a lot of black and mixed England players there talking about their experiences. Even the soundtrack just makes you feel like I'm at home and I'm watching it. So even if you don't play rugby, I would recommend watching that. And I like to think I covered as many bases as possible.
Amazing, thank you for that. I'm going to take it to you now, Mia. This one I think I'll share between Mia and Bourne, so kind of slightly different board perspectives. But what do you think both of you kind of needs to be done to increase participation of or representation of black folks on boards, whether that's student boards or boards in governing bodies? Whoever wants to jump in first can jump in.
Bourne?
You're on mute, Bourne. Come on.
Give some time to think.
I don't know. Well, Mia, you and I have been on the same board, so we know what the boardroom feels like. And I think we can both say the boardroom doesn't feel a boardroom which we can have a discussion that we're having now. So there is a lot. It's a big hill we have to climb, if I'm honest. In terms of back to my systems, what I was talking around earlier, and back to how we can inspire people to sit on the boards and then give them the confidence when they're there to be able to talk up. Because when you're in a position where you haven't been before, and you know you're clever enough to be there, but because of the inherent society, you've never experienced it. So the way that they go through even the agenda, even the way they address things, there's a certain way in which that happens. Mm-hmm. And we haven't had the opportunity to build that up. So we've had the opportunity and I bring it back to sport. Whether it's rugby, whether it's football, you've had the opportunity to play a game. You play that game and you learn from your preparation to get to the game, how you feel when you're in the game and how you voice your opinion afterwards. And you might have parents who've done it or a mum and dad that's done it, so they can tell you what to expect. Mm. We sit in a room now that no one before us can even advise us how to act in that room. Mm. And the problem we have is because if I can't tell Mia how to act because I'm there and you're there and it's our first time being there, and we can't ask our uncles or aunts to tell us how to act, how are we ever going to get comfortable? And we have to get comfortable by getting more people there and changing the way in which we get there. And then mentors being able to tell their stories of being on boards to give the younger generation the confidence. It's all down to confidence. So it's all down to sitting in a room and saying something where you don't feel out of place for saying it, or you don't care how you feel when you say it because you know it's right. And that's what I feel in a boardroom. The generation that are in there at the moment can have those arguments because they're byproducts of future generations that have been there before them. So yeah, it's just changing that part. I don't have the answer to that, but all I know is the more that I can sit on and the more I get comfortable being there, I know my kids that are running around on the Segway at the moment, and I can hear them in the background if you can. I can advise them, and they can advise their kids, and all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of starting our journey, really.
Yeah, I think I'd like 100% agree with Vaughan. I think so. My experience was last year when I was sports officer, and for example, I was used to being on the student union board of trustees, and moving, I guess, to a BUCS one was, I guess, moving to an external board was very different. And I guess splitting into two, not BUCS itself, because I've been on some other boards between that, but the main issues with board are access and the environment that you create. So access as in through what channels are you asking people to become board members? Because if it's only through LinkedIn, you're only going to get the keen, I'm putting this on my CV, you're not necessarily going to get the best candidates. So I guess the sourcing of candidates is important. Also being honest in advertising. So I know a lot more, I've even seen more companies doing it in their recruitment cycles for jobs, telling us what kind of people you're actually looking for. Is there an acknowledgement of what your board looks like at the moment? Is there any kind of thing that myself as a Black person can gauge that you actually care about my identity and that environment's going to be a nice place? And it's kind of similar to what Vaughan was saying in the environment. So back to my ADHD brain, I'm sorry, try and stick with me. My experience as on a student union board was that I can say stuff like, I don't know what that means, or I'm going to skip all that jargon you just used and say this, and people can understand me. Sometimes when you go externally to a board or using references, and it's like, it's not just a lack of understanding, it can be internalized as like, what you're saying does not count, don't be stupid kind of thing. And when you have your multiple identities, you know, you're a student, I'm a woman, I'm Black too, there are so many of those nuanced aggressions that can come your way. I guess it can inadvertently silence you. So I guess my energy a couple of years ago, I come to boards like, I'm ready to do this, and then dependent on how people would respond to me was how I would then be comfortable on the board. And I think now it's more a thing kind of similar to Vaughan saying, I have more experience on the board, so I'm like, you can't shake me kind of thing. I'm here to say what I want to do, and you know. But it's I mean, a shame that it has to come to that. So I guess there's I don't like pushing boards towards looking at, you know, this is the framework that you should do to make yourself more this and but the understanding that a lot of boards will bring people on with I don't know, you have this financial experience and you have this training here. Why is it not the normal to train people to provide an inclusive environment? And that's not just necessarily for Black people, that's understanding, working with people with disabilities, etc., etc. There's a lot of boards don't have that, I guess, as a startup, just understanding that there's a lot of different people around the table. How can we make this a comfortable environment? So yeah, and I think there's just not in a lot of boards as well, there's not the racial literacy to even comprehend at that point what they need and what they need to do for other people to be comfortable. It's kind of like, well, I did this course, so I'm not racist, but I guess understanding that there's always work to be done. So yeah, it's definitely not straightforward, but
thank you.
Yeah. Definitely echo that. And I think, and only light I can say is that the boards that are changing now, it's still a big hill. It's given the opportunity, and I know there's lots in the press, and there's lots around the inclusion on boards at the moment. But even if they put a Black person or BAME, however you want to phrase it, someone of ethnic diverse background on a board, we still have there to get comfortable. and then to get comfortable to inspire more people. So it's a process that needs to start. It should have started long ago, but we're starting it now because it's everyone's aware of it. Unfortunately, because of tragic events. But now we just need to get there and get comfortable, and then be able to express our opinion. And everyone that's pushing forward to be there, to be uncomfortable, to be comfortable, I kind of take my hat off to you guys, because we are the future to make it just a norm to have, like Mia said, you should have someone who represents the population of the UK on your board. If you're going to win, you need to be able to understand as many people as possible. And until we get to the point where we realize winning is being diverse, but in any form of business or sport, that's when we start to really win.
Completely. And I'm going to try and answer Alma's question by asking three of you to jump in from slightly different perspectives. So Alma has a slightly random question, which actually I don't think is that random at all. I think it's a really good one, on how do you advise responding to being the only remaining Black player on the netball team, which netball is obviously a very white blonde environment, and often you're not even competing with people of colour, both Black and non-Black. Now, Paul, I'd also like you to jump in on this, because you're working in the corporate space. You've probably done a whole load of recruitment on tech. I know from working in tech that I'm often the only Black person, Black woman in the room. So how do you guys advise that we respond to being the solo Black person in our spaces? Paul, from sort of that working perspective, Ahweyevu, obviously from rugby. I'm going to jump to you first, actually, Mia, because it's netball. So
yes, so netball is my game. Been doing it since year 4. It's a tricky one because I feel like the game, it's definitely, we're not at basketball in terms of diversity, but depending where you go is depending on the ethnic demographics, let's say. I had something similar when I started in first year. I thought it was a safe sport in terms of, when I say safe, as in there'll be enough people that are Black. I was wrong. I walked in there and I was like one of, you can just point people out. It was really uncomfortable. So I guess it depends like what energy you have for this kind of contribution. Are you saying, I'm part of this and I feel uncomfortable? I'm part of this and I want to make a change, because not everyone has to be like a trailblazer. You can sometimes just want to play sport and do it comfortably, and that's very valid. One thing I'd say, I would definitely encourage you to get on committee, because I think there's been a very strong theme is that as soon as you come into any kind of leadership position, people see that and people will follow. Encourage your friends to join. It might not, because I know like sport at university, when you're in a sports team, it's everything, and it can be an intense environment, and the people that run it are not necessarily the maturest or anything like that. But if you have a safe relationship with someone within that club, within that team, within the student union, your sabbatical officer or whatever, having those starting those kind of conversations, not at your expense, which is an important thing, are also really important. I guess for your mental, as in I am a Black person playing netball and I want to play netball, but I also want to preserve and protect my space. You don't have to give your energy to everyone. So stupid comments, random people that make you feel unsafe, avoid. Try and create relationships with people that actually respect you, is an important bit. But yeah, it's definitely a difficult one, and I can empathize, but the way that I think I dealt with it was bringing more people into the club, and jumping up in those leadership roles and having my little inner circle, regardless if that was completely Black or not. Because yeah, I don't think it's something you should be doing by yourself.
That's a very good point to end on there. And Paul, can I ask you to jump in on that from a working or work perspective?
Yeah, so how I kind of see it, and I could use myself as an example. Like, I went to Loughborough University, coming from Barbados, that being a very, very white environment. I always felt like I shut myself down when I first went there, and I was like, I can't continue to do this. And I think for me, it was more like a mentality switch thing, that I was like, okay, well, I'm the only black person in the room, or I'm the only black person in this room. They're already looking at me anyway because I'm standing out. So let me stand out and make sure they see something good, and basically be the change that you actually want to see. So like, if you're the only person there, just make sure you're doing something that is positive, and that's really, really great. And it's strange for me because I never see myself as like a role model or anything like that. But then I have a cousin who's about 10 years younger than me, and he actually decided he wanted to be a civil engineer because he saw that I did civil engineering. And I'm not pretending like that's not something great. I think that's absolutely brilliant. But I never set out doing civil engineering looking to inspire people. I just said, oh, that's just what I want to do. And he decided that, oh yeah, Paul's doing that. Of course, that's something that I can do. But yeah, I would always say in these sorts of spaces, and I digress a bit, in these sorts of spaces, just be the change that you actually want to see. And I would say that in the same thing, like in an assessment center, or I know like in an assessment center, that's the type of setting that you get in where you could be the only black person in the room. Again, you're the only black person in the room. They are going to notice you because you're the only black person in the room. Make sure that you're actually standing out, not in an aggressive way, but make sure that you're actually standing out and getting your point across because they're already watching you anyway. That's how I see it.
Takes us to Ohio's second slogan of "Use Your Blackness," which
Yeah.
there's a whole series of t-shirts coming out from this webinar. I can see it. And Ohio, actually, I'm going to take you away from that question because we had one which was in the chat and not the Q&A, about whether you find it frustrating to be the face of promos. This person says they always refuse to be the token black person in the picture, but that's where it starts. So I mean, that's probably a challenge we've all kind of had to deal with. But where do you stand on it?
I think it might be good for Mia to chip in with this after me as well. I think we could potentially have different views, and I think it's good to have different views. Me personally, I see one or two more boys are in the chat, and they'll tell you, you know, if there's ever a chance to be on camera, as long as you give me enough notice to get a trim, like I'm there. Do you know what I mean? But I think it's a case of a lot of it is situational. The first thing to do is check it situationally. So whenever I had to do promo with the SABs, the other officers, there's only three of us. We had a pres, we had a vice pres. So the white man as the pres, we had a white woman as the other vice, and then there was me. So, you know, by default, I was going to be the only black one. But then on the flip side, she was also going to be the only woman. And so we had like a fairly decent balance there. But with promo stuff, if you have a say in who else can be in it, don't be afraid to ask for someone else to be in it as well. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the first thing. I think, you know, so just as an example, we had I got, you know, a bit of a creative control when it came to making our varsity videos, and, you know, they were picking the people they felt deserved to be in it, and I just flat out said, I was like, look, let's just make sure it's not all white people. And luckily I had staff that thought, oh yeah, no, that's right. Like, I probably wouldn't have even thought of that. And, you know, I didn't just put them in just because they were black people. I was like, okay, I'm going to pick the best people who deserve to be in this video, who also happen to be black. Because, you know, at my old junior, our football team was predominantly black, but, you know, we had a black girl on netball. You know, I was like sub for the swimming team, so I technically had that covered on their part. So we just wanted to make sure everyone felt like they were represented. We had our Asian students as well. And then what was the last thing I was going to say? I had something else. And also, I think maybe ask yourself why you find it frustrating. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I get just the whole, like, being the only black, so, oh, they're asking me because I'm the only black one. But then sort of think, you know, why is it important that I'm in this sort of thing, and why am I actually annoyed about it? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being annoyed I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being annoyed at being the only one there, but just sort of ask, you know, is the potential win outweighing my annoyance? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say, do I find it frustrating to be the face of promo? So, like, my first ever promo was like my third year, and had a varsity pick, and then all of a sudden my face just appeared inside the building, and I was like, oh God, this is, love it. But I do think it is really important on the context of it, because I can imagine I never really, if I was put on, for example, a university brochure and they were like, go and sit with this amount of people that you've never seen before, and all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, I see what the agenda is. I think that would be the frustrating part. So it depends on the agenda, really. Is this something that is self-serving for me, e.g. it's something I love, it's something that I've probably had some say in, I can back whatever my face is like talking about in reference to in this, I don't find it frustrating. And if I was conscious of that, I'd probably throw it over to other people, as in I prefer this person, or I'd probably say my concerns. But I do feel like that comes with a level of privilege, you know. Once you're an officer or whatever, you don't have a manager, you can say what you want, and that will get me when I go for another job, but that's beside the point. I can imagine as a student, think about what your passion is, think about what your moral compass is saying about different things. I think that's the only thing that I find frustrating about promo opportunities, because I feel like there aren't enough on campus for me to think I'm the poster girl for anything. Not yet. I don't think we're there yet on my campus.
No, that's really, really interesting. I think as well, I would also say that sometimes we are just going to be the only Black person in a situation. So it doesn't necessarily mean, ergo, you're the token, or ergo, you're the diversity pick. Sometimes it's just, well, this industry or this sport just isn't very Black yet. So sometimes it is just about kind of stepping into that and saying, right, okay, you know, using Ohio's, you know, using your Blackness, or, you know, using your influence while you're there, and not just necessarily assuming that being the only one is inherently negative, or that you are just the token. You might still be the best person in the room, but you just happen to be the only Black one there. And so I think it's sort of striking that balance between kind of not necessarily just being frustrated at that situation, because we might also be the only Black people in the room for the next 3-5 years while the world's getting its act together. So, you know, we've got to think about how we use that space, how we use that influence in that space as well. It's probably something that I would like to just contribute to that. And I think that's the end of our Q&A, although I really could have gone on for much longer. So I want to say thank you to all four of you, Bourne, Ohio, Paul, and Mia, for speaking so candidly and frankly and honestly in that. It was really useful. Thank you to anyone who posed questions either before or during this session. They were really interested, and I think that was a really cool conversation. So thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for having us.
No trouble.